on, everybody? Thank you to anybody who joined in. I don't know how many people are watching right now, but anyway, today we are going to make a fantastic corn risotto, and we're going to have shrimp and blistered tomatoes. The risotto itself is going to be super rich, and then the tomatoes are going to provide a nice little pop of acidity to balance it out. Then we're going to have some nice meaty shrimp in there to, just bring some seafoody goodness into all of it. If at any point anybody has any questions, don't hesitate to ask in the chat. It'll pop up for me. I'll be able to answer your questions. And yeah. Let's give it a couple minutes before we get going, so yeah, again, if there's any questions that you have, let me know. And also, throughout this thing, if there ends up being any kind of dishes you want to see in a future video like this, a future live stream where I'm teaching you how to cook, please don't hesitate, to ask. I'll try to make it happen. I know in the near future, I'm going to be doing a video where we make a duck dish. And that's because one of my subscribers and a good friend from college, Victor, a good buddy of mine, Victor, asked to see that, and I actually was just recently at a grocery store where they have duck, so I'll be doing that. All right. So let's get going real slowly, and I'm going to be going a little bit start and stop. And that's because the live stream is on a bit of a delay, so that way if there's anybody who has any questions, I don't want to be so far ahead that I don't respond properly, because I'm, just gunning through the dish. So, first thing we're going to do is we're going to work with the corn, and we're actually going to be using the husk, this green part that we normally throw out. That's actually going to be really, really useful to make a stock that's super flavorful, and that's what we're going to use to cook our rice in. Thanks, Georgina. You're the best. So Georgina, are you and Mike both cooking separate risottos and still comparing, or is that still the plan, or did you decide to do something different? What we're going to do is we're going to take the corn, we're going to cut off the one end, then we're going to flip it, and we're going to cut off the other end. It might take a little bit of force to go through. Just make sure you're careful with your knife, and it'll take a little bit of force, but not that much. And then we're going to take both of these ends and put them right into a pot. And then, same thing, we're just going to start peeling this off. Ooh! I want to see pictures of both dishes. So we're going to take the corn and kind of like the nasty hairs off, and we're going to put that directly in the pot as well. So just work your way around. And again, normally the husk and hairs are just like things that would go into the trash, but not today, because they actually do have really good flavor. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to grab an onion. And same thing. These peels, we're going to just take off the peel right now and cut up a little bit to go in this. But these peels provide really good flavor. And they will, and so then that way, you don't throw it in the trash and you have something super yummy. So we're going to take off the top. How do I want to do this? And then we're going to cut through the root. You're going to see right here, there's this I already took off, which is this side. And then there's this side where you can see the root where it attaches. Leave this side on. So then we're going to cut down the middle of it. And that's going to hold the onion together while we still cut it. And we're going to actually then cut off that bit on one of the onions. And that's just because that piece this half is going to go right in the stock, so we don't really care. The reason why we left that root on is because we are going to be dicing this half of the onion in just a little bit. But that whole onion can go right in this pot. Then we're going to add just a few garlic cloves. and a little bit of parsley stem. And this is all just to build a super flavorful liquid to cook our rice in, so that way the rice absorbs all that flavor. So I have a few garlic cloves right here. Mine already peeled. If yours aren't, don't worry about them. Just take them, smash them down, and throw them into the pot, peel and all. Again, that peel is going to help provide some nice flavor. And the reason why I'm smashing it is just to break it apart, so that way a little bit more flavor releases in the small amount of time we're cooking this stock. If we were cooking this a lot longer than we're going to, it really wouldn't be necessary, and honestly a bit of overkill. So then the last thing we're going to the stock is we're just going to cut off the ends of the parsley. Now, if you don't have all of these ingredients right there, that's fine. Really the most essential one for right now is the corn's husk. And in a second, the corn cob. And that's because that's where our main flavor is going to be coming from. All these extras are just there to build depth of flavor. Excuse me. And so if you're missing one or two, it really isn't actually a big deal. But having them in there will help. So then the last thing we're going to do is we're going to cut the corn off the cob. We're going to save the corn. And we're going to puree about half of it in a minute. Well, after we create the stock, but we're going to throw the cob in here as well, and that's gonna again just really help to build that flavor. So just take your knife, go at the top, and just hold down the cob on your board with just a couple fingers, and then run your knife kind of against the cob. You're going to feel it if you try to dig too far in. And the kernel should just fall off. Feel free to take your time with this. There's really no rush with this aspect. Again, it's one of those nice things where, like, if you haven't yet, try digging your knife in a little too far. Feel what it feels like for your knife to dig into the cob, and you'll understand about the right depth you want to go, because you want to get as close into the cob as you can without going too far, because otherwise you're leaving delicious corn that we can use later on that cob. So then I'm going to cut the cob in half, and we're going to put it into this pot. Now I'm going to fill this pot with water. I'm going to put the corn into a bowl, and then we're going to put the pot on the stove. So then we're just going to take the corn, put that in a bowl, set that aside, then a wet towel, and I'm going to take the wet towel and I'm just going to give everything a quick wipe as to clean up. A lot of cooking is cleaning, and cleaning as you go. It makes your life way easier. Alright, cool. So now what we have here is, you can see that this is reasonably filled with water, and we're just going to put it on the stove under high heat. I'm going to put a lid on it because I actually do have a lid. It's a new pot, wasn't sure. We're going to put a lid on it, bring it up to a boil, and just let it go for 15 to 20 minutes to try to bring out as much liquid as possible. We are going to dice our onion, and then we are going to start cleaning our shrimp. So put that on the stove and put that on as high heat as you can. Really traditionally, people would tell you that you should simmer all of your stocks, and technically that's true, because what happens when you simmer them is there's a bit of, for lack of better terms, especially when you're doing meat-based stocks, scum that floats up to the top, and then you can take it off. The reason why we're not going to do that this time is because we're just trying to make something really, really fast. And because we're doing this a little bit quicker, versus, you know, the fully proper right way. Like, that's why I'm comfortable with it. And honestly, the difference is, especially for a stock like this, is minute. Because we're not working with animal bones, I don't think there's going to be all that much, you know, scum or nastiness. So next up, what we're going to do is we're going to dice our onion. So we're going to take our knife, give it a quick wipe. And then we're going to go horizontally about halfway into the onion. We're just going to run our knife in till it's about 2/3 of the way cut. So you should see that it's still together, but there's a nice clean cut in there. And then I'm going to try to go from the side. Then using your finger as a guide, just make nice cuts that don't go all the way through. As you can see with my knife here, I'm not all the way through on this. And the cuts should be very close to one another. We're trying to dice this very small. If it's a little imperfect, it's not a big deal. And any little scrap or offcut you have is also not a big deal, because you can just take that and throw it right into your cornstalk that's cooking. So then once that's done and you've made all your cuts, we're going to turn it 90 degrees. And again, we are going to make nice small cuts, and then this will release a good dice. Then once it gets most of the way down, we're going to turn it onto its side, cut a few more, turn it back, then voila. Except for this little core piece. And then all the scrap here can go right into the stock. So then we're going to take our onion and put it into a bowl. And then we're going to cut up a couple cloves of garlic. And this onion here is for when eventually we cook our rice. I'm kind of trying to... normally what would happen in a restaurant is if you're making a risotto, if you're making this dish for... if this dish was being served in a restaurant, is you would have a stock already done in a fridge, just ready to go. And then you could just start kind of the rest of the process. But here we're starting from scratch, which is why some of this stuff is overlapping just a little bit. Hopefully this is all making sense so far. If I've lost you at all, please let me know. Next up, we're going to take 2 or 3 garlic cloves. And we're just going to take our knife, put it on there, put our hand directly on top of the knife, and push down. That should smash it. So you should have like nice smashed garlic. We're going to do that with all of our cloves. 2 and 3. Dope. Then we're going to add just a tiny pinch of salt. And the reason for that is that that'll help the garlic kind of break up even more. It's a trick kind of specifically. It's a trick for garlic. Helps it not stick to the knife as bad. And then if you're mincing garlic, the salt, if you're really like going to town and making it super tiny, the salt can almost act like a mini knife and really tear apart the garlic. Alright, cool. Once that's nice and rough cut up, about the same size as the onion, we're just going to put that in the same bowl as the onion. Alright, cool. Dope. Alright, so next up we are going to clean our shrimp. And again, we're going to end up having some shrimp tails after we clean our shrimp shells. And those will go directly into the stock to flavor it as well. I don't have many, so it's going to be pretty quick for me. I'll try to go a little bit slow on that. And that's because I'm only making enough for me for one batch. So I didn't buy that many shrimp. But here we go, my overpriced shrimp from Whole Foods because I waited to the last minute to buy. But I have some really nice ones that are fucking semi-frozen, and that's great. Alright, cool. Oh, that's annoying that these are... I didn't even realize that. That's my own fault. Alright. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to work around the shrimp, and we are going to take off that shell. It should just peel away. And we're going to work all the way up to the top of the tail. You'll notice that the shell, once you get up to the tail, changes a little bit. It becomes a little stiffer. So we're going to leave, once I pull everything off, all right, cool. We're going to leave just this little bit, taking everything else off. And again, don't throw away the shells because we are going to use those to flavor the stock even more. Just add that depth of flavor. So again, it's one of those things where, like, you might not even be able to sit there and say, oh yes, I taste the shrimp in the risotto, in the rice itself. But it's one of those things where you'll be like, wow, this tastes really good. I don't know exactly why. And it's often because people take steps like this, adding just, going that extra mile to add that little layer of flavor. Doesn't take a lot of work, but it can make a lot of difference. So I'm going to go through all of these, and then we're going to put the shells away into the stock, and then we're going to devein these guys. All right, Georgina, Mike, are y'all keeping up? Am I going too fast? How's the speed on this? Have I lost you on anything? Yoink. And if you're just making a shrimp dish at some point, and you have the shells, and you're like, hey, I don't really want to make a shrimp stock. I'm not cooking anything in that way. Another really good use for shrimp shells is, if you're not going to make a stock, is to make a shrimp butter or a shrimp oil. So just melt some butter, add the shrimp shells into it, let it cook for half an hour or so, and then drain it off. And then you can use that, and then let it cool down, and then you can use that to flavor different things. And it's super nice. All right. So now we have this nice little pile of shrimp shells. So I'm just gonna grab a bowl to easily collect them, so I don't drop them on my floor. All right, cool. And I'm gonna put them into my stock, which is sitting on the back. Yo, Diego, how's it going, man? Well, I mean, Mike, we all know from coding school that you're the better cook. I mean, that's just a fact. You brought in, for anybody else who's watching, my buddy Mike is tuned in. He and his girlfriend are... His girlfriend, Jesus, his wife. I'm a moron. Mike and his wife are both cooking. They're having a competition. But Mike and I went to coding school together when I went to change careers. And there was one day where I was buying lunch in Chinatown because the coding school is right next to Chinatown. And Mike brought in his lunch. And he determined that because he brought in his lunch that one day, that he was officially a better cook than me. And I gotta say, he's right. I mean, if that's not science, I don't know what is. So anyway, so we have this boiling away. Woo. I'll bring this over here. So we have this guy going. I'm just going to give it a quick mix. You can already smell the goodness. And again, this is a stock. All we're doing is we're making a flavorful liquid to cook our rice in. You can follow the methods that we're doing later with anything else you want. You can use any kind of similar seasonal vegetable to make a stock. You can use just chicken stock if you want. I just wanted to show you something because corn is still in season. It's towards the end of it, but it still is. And so when food's in season, a risotto is just an amazing way to show off how incredible that ingredient is. How can we code an app that helps people in cooking? Well, actually, kind of funny thing is that I just got rejected from a company that sort of does that. I went through all the interview stages with a company called Thought Industries. They ended up deciding to go with other people. That's neither here nor there. But they actually run the test platform for America's Test Kitchen, where they have a bunch of online. They have a bunch of online courses in terms of like how to cook. Also, Chef Steps has some stuff that's really cool. But yeah, it'd be cool to think of some specific ingredients. I actually had this idea way back when I was in coding school of I wanted to build an app where people could put in different recipes or find different recipes and say, okay, on Monday I want to eat this, Tuesday I want to eat this, Wednesday I want to eat this, Thursday I want to eat this, and then press a button. And then it would generate a grocery cart for them, like on Instacart or something like that. That would combine all of what they needed. So, for instance, if you needed onion for one dish and onion for a second dish, that it would simply it'd be like, okay, cool. I now know that I need 2 onions. Or if you needed like 3 tablespoons of of butter for this and a stick for this, it would just say, okay, the closest thing is I need to buy a half pound of butter. And so then that way you could kind of almost like Blue Apron it, but with your own recipes and just, but have it be for more days and therefore cheaper. Just an idea I had what I built kind of the starting aspects of that, but like the API I was using had really messy data. All right. And I would have had to do a lot of data cleaning, and then there's also some machine learning that was beyond me to actually get it done. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to devein the shrimp. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our shrimp, like this. We're going to take a knife. In this case, you can use a chef knife. I'd say in this case I have what's called a petty. It's a medium-sized knife, but also a paring knife, a small one would work. You want to work with an appropriate sized knife. Again, you could do it with this guy, but that's a lot of knife to hold to do some small petty work. So that's the petty. So what we're going to do is we're going to lightly run our knife along the back of the shrimp. Now you're going to feel, you should not have to push super hard. You should be able to just kind of glide it in. And where are you? Then, there we go. Then you're going to see kind of like a weird track. Kind of like, well, this. And you're going to take that out and throw it away because it's gross. And we're just going to do that with all of our shrimp, which is also kind of why working with shrimp can be really petty, because if you have to clean them and take out all the poop tracks, poop, it can be kind of annoying. Luckily, because the shrimp I have are nice and big, it's super easy to handle with. That'd be another thing where if you're like, hey, I have this, but the problem with something like that is if you're to tell people like, oh, I have, this in my pantry, that's a lot of data entry from people, and I don't know how well people would keep up with that. I think there are some websites out there where if you say, hey, I have, these couple of ingredients, so maybe like a tweener where you could be like, hey, I have, tomatoes and shrimp, what are some recipes that incorporate both of them? Or just like add ingredients and slowly have it parse down, a database full of ingredients or different recipes until you find something that has it. Yeah, that would also be super cool. And then the other thing, there we go. Sometimes it can be hard to find the vein. Again, this is called deveining. Again, it's a little gross, but really, you're removing the intestinal tract from the shrimp. Yeah, actually, in terms of coating, I need to find just some random. I need to find some random project to just do on my own. All right, now that it's out of boil, I'm going to drop the temp just a little bit. I'm going to let that rip still. All right. Taking out. Sometimes. This shrimp hasn't eaten in a while. And it's fine. It's truly, it's fine. It's just, it's one of those things where it is considered slightly unpleasant. Like, in terms of like the hoity-toity French, whatever, it's not going to poison you. It's not, you're not going to get sick. There's a good chance if you ate it, you wouldn't even notice. It's just that, it's one of those things where like, oh, you know that, like, once people know that it's there, it can be weird for people to, like, not think about taking it out. Yeah. Alright. So then I'm going to take the shrimp, and I'll actually... So my shrimp are really, really big. I put a size on there that's smaller. But as you can see, these guys are giant, would be difficult to eat. So I'm actually going to take off the tails on mine real quick. And I'm just going to slice them in half. And that's just so that way they cook more like the ones I said that you should have bought. I gave a size on there, and the store I went to didn't have them in that size with the shells on. I mean, so you can also buy... You can also buy shrimp with this already done, with it already shelled and deveined. It's not going to say without the poop track. It's going to say shelled and deveined. But if you see deveined, that's what it means. Because we like to use a lot of euphemism. Alright, so I'm just going to quickly cut these. And then I'm going to put these away and then clean my cutting board. And then one of the kind of cool things that we're going to do is when we cook the risotto just a little bit, is we'll make it start to finish, but I'm going to kind of give you a little bit of instruction of what to do if you want to make the risotto as a part of a bigger meal, and kind of how restaurants do it. Because what restaurants do is we'll cook a risotto 80% of the way. And then we will cool it down, set it aside. So when you, the guest at a restaurant, order a risotto, all we need to do is finish it. We're not cooking rice from raw. If we did that, nothing would ever get done. Ever. Because it would just take too long. Alright, so I'm just going to wash my board real quick. But Diego, Mike, Georgina, are there any kinds of foods that you want to see in one of these in the future? Then my buddy Victor said he wants to see duck at some point, and I found a grocery store around here that has duck. And Mike, if you've never been to Market Basket, you need to change that. It's the most magical place in the world. It's pretty much Costco prices, but amazingly stocked, and you're buying retail, so you don't have to buy Costco amounts of food. Alright, knife one. Knife two. Now I'm going to wash my hands one last time. So, after dealing with raw shrimp, you want to make sure that you wash your hands. Alright, go. Alright. Peruvian food. Alright, yeah. What should I call it? Ceviche de gringo? I've actually kind of joked with my buddy who's, I have a buddy of mine, he's of Argentinian descent. His parents are both from Argentina, but he grew up in California. we've joked about opening a taco food truck. It's more that he has, because he hates the tacos in Boston. There are some places that make good taco filling, but there's no places that actually make their own tortillas. And seeing that that's a major component of it, it kind of makes it the tacos in Boston trash. And so yeah, so he's been wanting to do tacos, and so I've told him when we have a taco truck, it should be tacos gringos. Absolutely not, Diego. There's no way I'm cooking guinea pig. I mean, I ate guinea pig when I was in Peru, but the number of people who would judge me solely on that, who would be like, "Oh my God, you're trying to kill my pet," like that'd be a way to like completely murder murder my YouTube channel. You know, as fledgling and small as it is. Alright, so what we're going to do now is we're just going to cut up a little bit of parsley. And the parsley is for when we finish off the risotto. And this is kind of a restaurant-y thing to do. So most home cooks would cut their parsley kind of last minute. But there's no reason why you can't do it now. Like, and by now I mean like a day ahead of time if you want. 2 days ahead of time. Yeah, I actually just had my most popular video ever. It got more views in a day than my best performing video has ever gotten. And that's because I hit on the right topic. And also advertised it right. Mike, you should not go to Peru because they are both friends and food. I've had guinea pig. It was fire roasted when I was in Peru. Because, you know, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. Like, you know, when you're in somebody else's country, follow their culture. And I know that that's a traditional food in Peru. And I gotta say, it was pretty darn tasty. Like, they served the guinea pig whole, so it was really weird seeing the big buck teeth. But I think that's because in America, we try to forget that meat comes from animals. But yeah, like the fire roasted gave it a great smoky flavor. And then the skin was just super crispy. So we're just cutting it to like reasonably small. We're not trying to like murderize it or anything. So then the parsley can go into a small container. I have a few down here. I'm just fishing one of them out. But yeah, I can do my take on Peruvian dish at some point. I found there's a Peruvian restaurant really close to my apartment. And on one of these nights, when my girlfriend and I are hanging out, I've been meaning to order food from there because she's had ceviche, but she hasn't really had a meal where she sat down and knew that it was Peruvian. And I personally think Peruvian is one of the most underrated cuisines in the entire world. In the entire world. Because like Italian and Spanish and French cuisines, they're great and they are great, but everybody knows it. Peruvian cuisine is also great, but people don't really know jack about it. I would happily pet guinea pigs and love them and make them my friends. Alright, cool. And then the last thing I'm gonna do before, actually, a couple of things, is I'm gonna just grate a bit of pecorino romano. If you already have grated cheese, you don't need to do this right now. I just have a big block of cheese and I like to grate it off. I think that the cheese that's not pre-grated is a little bit better quality. That's just kind of a little bit of a chefy thing. Again, will I use pre-grated cheese? Yeah, absolutely. There's, a bunch that's solid. But, I don't know. Also, with how I use it, the pre-grated, if I was in a restaurant, probably would just, and I was ordering stuff to make a dish, I'd probably order just the pre-grated stuff. But in this case, especially with my home cooking, I don't use cheese a lot with just my personal diet. So this will last longer versus the pre-grated stuff. So that's why I went that way. And again, we're going to take the cheese, put it into a container, and set that aside. And then we get to start cooking things, which will be fun. So in terms of like the monster, I guess it's all a matter of perspective. I used to work in a restaurant where we had a part of the restaurant that was very much the butcher station, where we would, you know, cut down larger cuts of meat into smaller ones, into individual servings, you know, clean up all of our fish and whatnot. And we had a hostess who was vegan, and yeah, like, to each their own, man. If you want to choose to eat something or not eat something, in my personal opinion, that's on you. I don't give a shit. Right? If you're like, hey, I don't want to eat this because, like, more power to you. That's awesome. However, she was one of the kind of people who was like, I don't do this and you shouldn't either, and if you eat this way, you should feel horrible. Which I think is kind of dickish, but she would argue that, you know, I have that attitude towards animals, but neither here nor there. She put up right above the butcher station, she put a sticker that said, you know, there's no such thing as humane meat or humanely slaughtering meat. And like, us chefs being like the sick bastards that we are, we just kind of laughed about it, and we were like, yep, that's true. Because if you work professionally in the kitchen, like, you damn well know the connection between meat and an animal, right? That some animal had to die for that meat to exist. And you have to learn and accept it, because you're breaking down so many. But yeah, so sorry, Mike, but like, calling me a monster is not going to hurt me here. Alright. So here we have my fancy induction cooker. You can just use your normal range. The reason why I'm using this is so that way I don't have to try to move a camera. Simple as that. So then what we're going to do is we're going to put a pan on and get it really hot. And we're going to blister our tomatoes. And again, this is just like the corn. The tomatoes are in season, which is why I chose to use them. And I have some fun multicolored ones. If you just have regular cherry tomatoes, that's also cool. And we're just going to let the pan... Ow, toasty. Nice. Oh man, I'm so excited about this specific pan. I just got a few new pans that actually work with the induction, because you need special ones. And I got them, but like, stainless steel pans like this are normally really expensive, but I just got these at Marshall's on the cheap. Yeah, this thing is fancy. I got it back when I used to work at Wayfair, and I had the employee discount, so I got it. It was on open box. So somebody had bought it, sent it back. They never actually even opened it. And so then they discounted it, and then I got it for half off. So I got this for like, I don't know, $40. It was great. Alright. So you want to edge on your pan being hotter than not, because we're actually trying to char our tomatoes a little bit. We're trying... Sorry, one sec. Don't care. If your pan isn't hot enough, it's more going to like steam and stew your tomatoes versus giving them like a good char. And we're trying to give just like a little bit of balance. So now that it's nice and hot, I'm just putting down just a tiny bit of oil. But you could also do this in, actually, might even be better to do this in a dry pan. Give it like 10 seconds to heat up. And you want to do this, you want to heat your pan, then add your oil, because otherwise what'll happen is the oil will break down and kind of get a little bit gross. And when you put your tomatoes down, you should hear a nice sizzle. If you don't, it means your pan wasn't hot enough, in which case you should pour the tomatoes out, put your pan back on, let it really get up to temp, and then try again. So as you can see, there's a lot more room in the pan, and I have more tomatoes here. But I would advise doing small batches, because what happens is when you add something to a pan, is it drops the temp. And because we really want that high temperature, this is a place where working in batches is a really good thing. And just understanding when to work in batches is a very important kitchen skill and can apply to a whole lot of things. For example, another really good place is if you are cooking meat for a stew, you often want to, or if you're making like sloppy joes or something, where you want to brown meat, you want to make sure that you don't overcrowd a pan and work in appropriate sized batches. So as you can see, like after I gave it a little bit, you can see that some of these tomatoes are, you can see that it's starting to build a little bit of char. Just gonna flip it. Same thing. I'm gonna grab a plate for these to land on. So now I just have a plate for when these are done. And I'm gonna do a second batch of these. And then we're gonna move on to the next thing. While these finish cooking, I'm gonna quickly wash my cutting board. You should see that you should have a nice char. Just actually a little bit of burn is a good thing. And if you touch them, you'll feel that they're actually not fully cooked through, and that's fine. These are going to get cooked again later with the shrimp, so we're not actually trying to cook the living daylights out of them right now. We're just trying to give them just a little bit of char, which will help, again, build that little bit of unique flavor. Alright, cool. So then, again, let the pan get nice and hot. Throw some more tomatoes down. Reserve a few for snackies. Bring them here. And then we'll just a tiny bit of oil. So, the reason why they started sizzling right now after I added the oil is because fat in general helps promote even cooking, which is why, and which will help it color and become really nice. Oh, that's weird. Right? And also, during this entire time, our pot of stock has been cooking, boiling away. And we're going to strain that off. And we are going to strain that off in just a minute. But again, like during this entire time while we've been doing all this other stuff, we've been developing flavor, which is, awesome. Alright, so now that this has a nice bit of color, same thing, we're just going to set these aside. Put these in the fridge so then that way they can cool down, and we'll get back to these in a minute. Alright, I'm going to set this on the back burner. Dope. We'll get back to this guy in a minute. Voila. So here, I mean, it does make stuff delicious, but, it's important to understand why it makes it, And yeah, fat has a number of purposes. Cooking, promoting even cooking isn't the only thing. But, that's one of the things that it does. But don't worry, we'll have lots of fat. So we're going to strain all of this out. So that should leave us with the liquid. We're going to save the liquid. And then all of this stuff is now trash. We no longer need the husks or the onions or whatever. All of its flavors have now gone into here. No. I unplugged them temporarily. My apartment actually has a really big problem with the fact that the smoke alarms would go off even when cooking just eggs. So whenever I'm doing serious cooking, I turn them off on temporarily, and then I turn them back on later on. You know, so that way they can actually be useful. All right, so I'm gonna take this, throw this away, and now, so now we have this golden liquid that tastes amazing, looks a little bit like pea, to be honest. And we're going to do something that's a little bit non-traditional, which is we're going to take some of the raw corn and we're going to blend it into the liquid. And the reason why I'm doing that is to, again, just reinforce that corn flavor. I don't... I personally, unless somebody gives me a darn good reason as to why I should do something, I'm not one that's beholden to tradition. So I'm going to take about half my corn from the one cob. I'm going to put it in here. And we're not trying to like make a thick puree or anything. But yeah, so like if somebody can tell me like this is tradition and this is why, awesome, I'll do it that way. But if you can't tell me why you should do it a certain way, then I don't particularly care. In this case, I'm going to blend in that corn because that raw corn has some absolutely wonderful flavors. We have some cooked corn flavor already from there. And then we're going to later on take this corn and we're going to cook it with the tomatoes and shrimp. So we have even more cooked corn flavoring this dish. Alright. So we're just going to blend this. Got it going. No tricks. And especially with how I cook, whoo, like I remember the first time I was cooking in this apartment, like doing some serious cooking, I was just meal prepping. And I was roasting bell peppers in the oven. And literally just from roasting the bell peppers, that set it off. So now we have this kind of milky corn liquid. It smells like corn in the best way possible. And then that's going to be our liquid to cook our risotto. Okay. So then, I'm going to set this away. And then I'm going to show you before we actually start cooking for real, in terms of the actual rice and all that jazz. I'm going to show you one last thing that we tend to do in restaurants that most home cooks wouldn't do. You don't really need to do as a home cook, but if you're ever making a really large meal, it's a super handy thing to do, especially for pastas, or if you want individually portioned things, or if you have somebody who has some kind of dietary restriction, and you need to work around that, which is we are going to make kits, and in this case, it's going to look a little silly because I'm only going to make just one. However, it's super handy for, this is something we would do in restaurants all the time. Like we would line up like 30, 40, 50 containers for a given dish. So let's just say this dish was coming off a menu at a restaurant I was at. We'd have like 40 containers and say, okay, so we have the risotto and then we're going to put the shrimp and tomatoes and corn on the inside. So we'll take 5 shrimp pieces or whatever it is. Each one of the kits gets 5 pieces and that way it's always the same. Then we're going to put in an appropriate amount of tomato. All right. A little bit of garlic, a little bit of onion. Some corn. And so then when you actually go to cook this off, all you have to all you have to do is take the lid off of this, dump it in, and you're good to go. And then one last thing, it wasn't on the ingredient list. I'm sorry about that. Kind of saw it in my fridge yesterday, and it made me go, ooh, that'd be fun. Which is, oh shit, right, this right here. Which is, I'm also gonna add just like a spoonful of chilies to give it a little spice. So here I have, if I can find a appropriate size spoon. I have hot Italian style peppers. Just got a spoonful of that. And that's kind of the beauty of cooking, which is, if you understand the framework, you can kind of do whatever the hell you want. Right? If you understand how to make a risotto, which hopefully after going through this you'll feel comfortable and it'll be nice and easy, you can change up whatever you want about it. As long as you know and follow through the base technique, it doesn't have to be corn. You can use whatever flavor you want. We're gonna kind of like make kind of a mini stew to go in the middle. Right? If you understand the technique behind that, you can change what ingredients, what flavors you have there. You can add stuff to it. So if you want to add, if you wanted to add ginger and like Asian flavorings to this as well, you absolutely could, and it would absolutely work. So again, I have this ready to go. And you could pretend, just having this and not having to be like, okay, I need the corn, I need this, I need this, I need this. When you actually go to finish off a dish, when you go to serve people, having kits like this will make your life so much easier. All right. So with that in mind, I'm gonna pour my stock from this big old pot into a smaller container, and then let's get cooking on the actual risotto. Georgina, Mike, you keeping up? Everything good there? Again, if I'm going too fast at any point, let me know. I can always slow down. If it's going too slow, let me know. I can always pick it up. Alright, cool. So now it's time to actually cook the rice. What we've all been waiting for. Oh, one last thing. So on the ingredient list, I said to have mussels, and we are going to use that. The reason why I don't have the mussels in that kit right there is that mussels have to be alive when you go to work with them. So these guys are sitting in a perforated bag already. Actually, I need to wash these real quick, some of them. And because there's a lid on that would suffocate the mussel and kill it and make it not good to eat. All right, cool. But that's why I don't have it in there. Again, so that's, I guess you could say it's, like just being smart about what you do. All right, cool. So I'm gonna wash it. I'm gonna wash out the pot that we cook our stock in real quick. So now I'm gonna put this on. I'm gonna put it on a nice medium heat, and it is time to cook our rice. So what I have here is arborio rice. And now, with a lot of rices, like for instance, if you're doing steamed rice, you want to wash it. In this case, you don't. The reason why you normally wash, for instance, steamed rice or sushi rice is because you want each granule to be separate and you want to get rid of the excess starch. In this case, with risotto and how it's getting cooked is you want the starch to come out in what we're cooking, and that's going to kind of make a porridge almost in between, like each of the kernels. So you don't want to wash away that excess starch. So I have my burner on a 4. Just going to add a generous glug of olive oil. A little bit more generous. And it's probably a lot that I have here, but that's because, trust me, it'll get absorbed. Then we're just going to take the onions and garlic we already have chopped up, and this is why we did this ahead of time. So that way it can be nice and easy. And we're just going to throw it in there. And you should hear, when you put it in, a nice gentle sizzle. It shouldn't be raging and hard, but you should but like you shouldn't hear nothing. You should hear, you know, this. You should hear the sounds of that. And we're just gonna let that steam out. It's like I have a piece I shouldn't have in there. Then we're just gonna let that cook, and we're gonna take our time, and we're like this. This is a process that takes a little while. In a little bit, we're going to be using some wine, so I'm just gonna open this up and pour myself a glass. And so what we're going to do next is, after our onions and garlic start to cook a bit, is we're going to add the rice and we're going to toast that in the olive oil. And again, that's just another step that gives it just, like by toasting the rice, it gives things just a little bit of extra flavor. Yummy. Alright, cool. Alright, cool. So at this point, the onions and garlic are becoming nice and fragrant and delicious. Again, so I turned up my induction cooker to a 5 out of 8. Yeah, 5 out of 8. Yeah, I'm just giving these guys a nice mix. And we're just trying to release some of the flavor from the onions and garlic, so that way it doesn't have that raw onion and garlic flavor. Although by the time we add all of our liquid and cook everything down, it'll be fine. Alright, cool. So then what we're going to do, and this is actually kind of one of the nice things about risotto, which is you don't have to be wicked precise, is we're going to pour in our rice. Somewhere between like a cup and 2 cups. And the reason why I say that this is really nice is because the method of risotto is one where you... Sorry, and then we're going to give it just a quick stir as to mix in the onions, garlic, and olive oil and just let that toast. The way risotto works is, as you cook it, is you add a little bit of liquid, let that cook off. Add a little bit of liquid, let that cook off. Add a little bit of liquid, let that cook off. So it's very much a self-regulating process. So as long as you have enough liquid, you're good. And, you know, you can have a flavorful liquid, you know, such as stock, but if necessary, you can add just a little bit of water. So after this gets a nice toast, I'm going to stir it in just a minute. After the rice gets beautiful, toasty, and you start smelling it just a little bit, we're going to add a little bit of wine as our first batch of liquid. Let that cook down. And then we're going to start adding in our cornstalk, which I have directly in front of me, but I don't think you can view in the camera right now. But that's sitting right there. And a lot of people really like risotto, but they feel scared to make it, and that's because they're like, oh, it's a really long process. And yeah, right now, cooking the rice from start to finish is something that takes a while. However, with something that I'll be showing you in a minute, it's something where you can do it, where you can make this a really quick and easy meal that you can have, honestly, any night of the week. Whole Foods. I got it at Whole Foods today. Market Basket also carries it. You want to look in the Italian section, like near the pastas. Hopefully you were able to find it though in the end. Yeah, I made way too much, whatever. So as you might be able to see, some of the rice is starting to gain just a little bit of brownness to it, and that's what we're aiming for right now. Not like severely so, but just like a tiny little bit. And so now at this point, I'm gonna go and add. This is arborio rice, which is kind of the same, but you just want short grain starchy rice of some kind. So then what we're going to do is add just like a couple glugs of wine. Enough to like, once I give it a good mix, is that it covers the rice. And after we add the wine, we're just going to give it a good stir. Whoop. Add a very small pinch of salt. You don't want to add too much. Most people would say don't add any right now. I disagree with that. But add a small pinch of salt because, in the words of David Kinch, who is a far, ridiculously way better chef than I could ever dream of. The dude's forgotten more stuff than I know. Like, salt changes as you cook it. So, again, we're not trying to make it so that way, like, if you took a bite of this right now, besides the rice being crunchy and horrible, you'd be like, wow, that's really under-seasoned. We're not trying to make it a fully seasoned thing because it's, going to cook over a while. But you can see that the starch in this is already starting to come out just a little bit, right? And that's because we did not rinse off the rice ahead of time, washing away the extra starch like you would in, most like Asian applications of rice. Possibly Mexican too, but I know nothing about like Mexican cuisine. And just as we go, we're just going to keep giving it a stir. I still have this on a 5 out of 10. And once that liquid is mostly cooked off, the wine is now done. What we're going to do is we're going to add just a little bit, a similar amount of that corn liquid. That looks kind of gross now, but tastes amazing. So then add that in, just enough to cover the rice, right? So you can see right here, right? It's just a little bit over, not by much. And give it a good stir. And again, just like, you kind of want to be stirring it constantly. Oh, I mean, that works. And like, if you go somewhere else and you see, I don't know how much that costs, but one of the nice things about risotto and like rice dishes in general is that it's cheap as hell. I would imagine that like a pre-boxed, this is a risotto kit, was a little bit pricey as compared to just buying a big old box of rice. But yeah, I mean, that absolutely works. And in a kitchen with cooking, there are no rules. You can kind of do whatever the hell you want. Now, some things are going to fail epically, but something like that is totally fine. So again, we're just giving it a good stir. And this kind of reminds me of a way that kitchen people like to mess with one another. So whenever somebody new joins a professional kitchen, or whenever you have somebody who's different experience, generally people like to mess with them. Kitchens are not nice places. So usually that involves like some kind of hazing in turn, like, and it's nothing like particularly cruel most of the time. But it's things like, oh, we have a flour, it's ground to this level, we need it ground more. Take your knife and go cut the flour. Right? And like, you're probably sitting there being like, well, that's ridiculous. I would never fall for something like that. Ha 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 ha. What's an idiot? But the thing is that like, professional kitchens are very militant places. You're often taught, you say yes chef, no chef, I don't know chef. And that's kind of the only responses, especially like in nicer places. And so like when somebody tells you to do this, right, especially if you're new somewhere, you just want to impress the chef. So even if you're like, well, that seems weird, you often just be like, yeah, chef. So, and chefs know that, so they'll take advantage. And like, a lot of places will relax, or you'll have, conversation, like casual conversations that go on. But when push comes to shove, it's, often people want to hear yes chef, no chef, I don't know chef. No, no. I threw in maybe half of it. The other half of the corn pieces are in the shrimp kit. So there's some that I blended into the stock. But then like other of it I have in there, so that way you could have corn pieces. But honestly, you can do whatever feels right. One of the things that I think actually would go really well with this, I wouldn't actually want to sit there and make it myself, but like, is actually a corn chip. Because then that would give a textural difference. Because this dish ends up just being this dish will be very, very soft, and texturally there isn't a lot to it. Yeah. But anyway, so one of the classic pranks of kitchens is that you tell somebody to make a risotto, and most cooks know how to make a risotto and what the base method is. But what you'll tell them is you either have to turn it clockwise or counterclockwise, and you can only stir it that way. That if you start turning it counterclockwise, you always have to turn it counterclockwise, otherwise you'll fuck it up. And then like if a chef sees somebody like, turning one way and then turning the other, they'll use that as a chance to just like mess with the person. And like act like they screwed up this entire thing, or cause the cook to freak out a little bit. It's pretty amusing. And Diego, when you say corn pieces, I'm assuming you mean the corn kernels, because like the corn cobs and corn husks, I strained those out a while ago. I don't know if I made that clear enough, but I put that through a strainer and threw all of those away. But the corn kernels, I blended about half of them in, and then the other half went into that kit. So as you can see, over time the rice is starting to plump up and become nicer. It's still under. So one of the things you'll want to do is you'll probably want to grab a spoon and taste a little, and you'll be able to feel the texture change. And we're still going to want like a tiny bit of a bite, but it shouldn't be crunchy. And at this point, it's still on the crunchy side of things. So again, just same process. Just add water, stir it in, let it cook, keep stirring, and then I'm going to add just another pinch of salt, and a pinch of pepper. And just a small amount at a time, as to let that flavor develop over time. Right. Yeah, and again, like, it's one of the things where, like, you can do what you want. If you want to blend all of the corn kernels, because you're like, I don't want any of that texture, but I really want to develop that corn flavor, go right ahead, do that. Like, it really is often, if you have just a base level of technique, you can kind of do whatever you want, which is why I'm very inexact in my cooking, in that I'll be like, okay, I'll throw a bit of this, I'll throw a bit of that, and I'll do, I'll be like, okay, I'll try this, and I'm a little willy-nilly about how much of anything I throw in there. Am I cooking like this? And that's because I know that I have enough base technique that I know it's going to turn out all right. And so I'm not, so it's not as though I'm completely blind as I'm doing stuff, but, because of that, I'm not sitting there being like, okay, I need to measure exactly this amount of this. Some things I'll measure, but like, if I'm measuring 4 cups, for instance, I'll use one of these, because I know that this is 4 cups. And if it's 2 cups, I'll either use a half one of these, or I'll eyeball a half. Just from years and years and years of experience. If you want to be a little more precise, you can, but you absolutely don't have to. And again, that's why I think risotto is such a wonderful thing, because it is very much self-regulating. And really the thing you need to know is saute your aromatics. In this case, the onions and garlic. What those aromatics can change depending on the exact flavor profile you want. Yeah, 648p. Gross. Why? Don't know why that is. Sorry, I just got a notification that my video resolution is not as good as it should be. Anyway. But so saute your aromatics, saute your rice, deglaze with wine or some kind of flavorful alcohol, and then start adding in your flavorful liquid. Cook a little bit at a time. Make sure that you get it to a good point, and then finish it off with some kind of cream, fat, something to drop the temp and really up the creaminess. And then in our case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how I would approach it in a restaurant in just a little bit. And by that I mean, once I get this 80% of the way cooked, it's getting close, I'm going to take a bunch of this and I'm going to just put it on a sheet pan or a plate. So then that way it can cool, it can be a nice thin layer and it can cool down rapidly in the fridge. And what that'll do is that'll, sorry, excuse me, is that will allow you to container it up. So all you have to do is maybe cook it for 5 minutes or so to finish it off whenever you want it. Which is something, so then that way, you know, for instance, you could then make a big batch on a Sunday, cool it all down, and then have risotto on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, whatever. You know, and it won't take you long, but you can have a better meal. Which is also kind of the whole point of my YouTube channel, which is I'm trying to show people how I would approach things in a restaurant, where a restaurant 90% of the work's done ahead of time, so that way you can do it when you have time, because we don't always have massive amounts of time at 5, 6, 7 o'clock to make a big meal. But that doesn't mean that we want to eat simple food all the time. I mean, I usually do because I'm lazy for myself. But if you want something nicer, like maybe you have I don't know, time on a Monday afternoon because life just gives you it that way. But you want something really nice for Tuesday. So if you can understand how to do the majority of the work on Monday afternoon and know what you really have to leave for Tuesday, that can just make your life so much easier. And as you can see here, as I've been sitting here talking, doing this, I've been kind of like casually stirring the entire time. And that's just going to help release more of the starch into the liquid. Because again, what really makes risotto is the starches in the liquid that really bind it up and make it thicker. Alright. So, as of now, my rice is finished, and I'm going to try to describe this as best as I can. So you're going to see that so it's not like done, ready to serve, ready to eat. What I mean by finished is that it's 80% of the way there. So here, just to show you in the camera, as you can see, like the kernels look nice, big, plump, and cooked. When I take a bite of them, so when I take one and I eat it, like I can feel there's a slight bite to it when I first put my tooth on the rice, but then it really gives in, and it's not crunchy. It's more like there's an initial firmness. Oh, so yeah, what I mean by stirring clockwise, which is, are you stirring right to left or like this? So chefs would like to mess with people by saying, okay, you can only stir this way. Oh no, you stirred back this way. You ruin the rice. And really, who cares? Well, again, that's why, Mike, for instance, right now, there's really not much of a difference in terms of, cooking the amount of risotto I did and double, right? So, for instance, if you made a double batch of this, and heck, you even froze a bunch, put it into quart containers, put it in the freezer, and then 2 weeks from now, you take it out, let it defrost overnight, or and then you take the next 10, and then we're going to do what we're going to do in a minute. Alright. So what I'm going to do is, you can take a half sheet tray, is I'm just going to pour this rice out. So if you're cooking risotto from start to finish. You wouldn't do this. But anyway, sorry, as I was saying, you could easily, you could make a really big batch of this, so that way, yeah, it's like one day you put in a little bit of effort, but then the other, bunch of days where you eat it, your effort is incredibly minimal. So normally in a restaurant, you would take it to this point. You would put it down on something where it made just a nice, relatively flat layer. So then that way there's lots of surface area so it would cool. And then you'd go and put it in the fridge. So that way it would cool completely. And then you would put it into containers. And like that's how all restaurants do it. So as you can see, I just put it on the back counter for now because we're going to finish this off immediately. But I have way more than I need for me. So I'm just going to wash out this pot real quick, and then we're going to finish this off. And also, keep in mind, you can do all this way quicker. As you get more comfortable with the process, things will be faster. You can also do things like, you can make the cornstalk way ahead of time. Like if you're making this exact same thing, you can make the cornstalk way ahead of time. So that way you didn't have to make the cornstalk and then do the other stuff. Or you could, let's just say you're making this in one shot. You could cut up the cornstalk, put that on the burner, and go watch a TV show. You could just put it on low heat and just go on with your life. Making stock is not an active process. It's something that's incredibly passive. And often, again, in restaurants, you'll do it while you do other things. Alright, cool. Just going to finish washing this pan out. Alright. Dope. Alright, now we're just going to give this guy a wipe. Alright, cool. So, here's kind of what's going to happen with this last steps is we're going to throw just a bit of risotto into the pot. We're going to warm it up, just kind of like one last batch of the stock. And then we're going to finish it off by melting in some butter. We're going to then, when I say finish off, we're going to actually turn off the heat, and then we're going to let the residual heat from the rice melt some butter, melt some of the cheese we had, and then at the very last second, we're going to add a little bit of the chopped parsley. Meanwhile, what we're going to do is we're going to cook the shrimp in this pan with the tomatoes, and we're going to saute it in a little bit of olive oil, and then we are going to deglaze. Once it gets nice and hot, we're going to add just a little bit of wine. And finish it off by melting in a little bit of butter. Alright, cool. Hopefully that makes sense in terms of plan of action. Right. So I have the left side pretty hot. That's just because we want to get a little bit of a good sear. So imagine the risotto is cold. I just took it out of the fridge. We're just going to take 8 portions worth. It's a little heavy, but whatever. It's probably a little bit big of a pot. Whatever. But again, as you can see from this plate, right? Again, imagine that this is cold right now. I have a whole bunch left over. I made way more than I need. I have multiple portions worth. All right, we're just gonna add a little bit of stock. I'm gonna turn the heat down on this right side to 2, and we're just gonna stir that stock in. Add another heavy pinch of salt. And the reason why, and this also gets to the reason why I season throughout. So that way, right now when we're doing stuff, if you hadn't seasoned at all, You would have to season the living daylights out of this rice. And to this guy, who's running on a 6, we're going to add just a little bit of oil. Give it a swirl. And throw down our shrimp, tomato, corn, all this good jazz. We're gonna grab just a few mussels. If any of them have like this weird little schmegma, just pull them out. And we're gonna throw the mussels right in. If you're doing a large amount, cleaning the mussels and full something you want to do ahead of time. I'm going to turn the rice up to 3. Give it a taste. The salt is good. Needs a little bit more pepper. Right, any questions, points of confusion as we've been going along? Also, again, Mike, Georgina, I want pictures of both of your risottos. So then we're just going to give this a nice little stir. And so, I'm going to use almond milk because when I finish this off, but when I use almond milk, just use cream, heavy cream instead. I had that on the list of things to buy. I didn't get it because honestly, I wouldn't use the heavy cream in any of my other cooking. So then we're just gonna give this pan with the shrimp a nice toss. But just pretend that this almond milk right here is heavy cream. So then I'm gonna take white wine, just give it a little splash. Season the shrimp with salt and pepper. The shrimp and corn mixture with salt and pepper. And what we're looking for is the shrimp to become nice and colored, and the mussels to open up. So as you can see here, there isn't a ton of liquid floating in here. There's a little bit, but not necessarily a ton. And we're just trying to cook that off completely. All right, cool. All right, risotto. I'm gonna add just a tiny bit more stock. Stir it, let this cook down one last time, and then we're gonna finish it. Alright. And then the nice thing about this right here is that, and by the way, I turn this up to 8 just to have everything cook off, is that all these flavors are going to meld nicely. Alright, cool. So then what we're going to do is we're going to add just a little bit of, in this case, almond milk, but it should be heavy cream. I added maybe 1/8 of a cup, somewhere between 1/8 and 1/4 of a cup. Stir that in. Let this cook down, and this is the final cook down of this stuff. And then kind of basically once this with the cream gets close, we're going to turn off the heat. Add in our shredded parm / pecorino. So, awesome. Yummy. Ah, fair enough. Yeah, I actually had to buy more pans for myself recently. Alright, so once this liquid, so you can see that the shrimp are nicely cooked, the mussels are open. So we're just going to take this, turn the heat down to 1, and I just added a knob of butter, and we're going to just let it, I'm just going to toss it lightly and spin it, and then I'm actually now going to turn off the heat and just let that slowly melt in. And what that's going to do is that's going to emulsify and create a nice, creamy, delicious sauce. All right. And then we're going to add just a heavy pinch of parsley to this to give it a little bit of freshness and green and counterbalance. And I mean, like, how amazing does that look? Just on its own. And this is just the center of the risotto. Like, or just the garnish almost. All right, cool. Now that this cream is basically cooked off, we're going to turn the heat off here. Similarly, we are going to add about a tablespoon of butter. Yeah, if you had the butter and the cheese, it'll still be creamy. Butter, cheese, and just stir that in. Ow. And the residual heat from this will cook. Now, I'll be honest, I screwed up just a tiny bit. I didn't cook this down quite enough. So this is a little bit loose. But I'm going to add just a little bit more cheese. Again, just give it a taste. Taste for seasoning. Mine's good right now. And you should feel that. It should still have like a slight chew to the texture. It shouldn't be like super soft. You know, and it might be because I added almond milk instead of heavy cream. But that's also part of cooking. I think this is a good lesson. People, even professionals, make mistakes. People make mistakes all the time. It's a matter of figuring out how to fix them, if they're major, if they're minor. Don't drink the cornstalk. In this case, my risotto was just a little bit loose, so I just cooked it down a little bit more. I underestimated things. Alright, cool. Alright, still the same question. Alright, cool. So then, what we have here is, again, you can see that, look at how creamy and thick, and like, you can see that like, in between the kernels, there's almost, you know, that sort of porridge I was talking about. So I'm gonna ditch the burner. It's a little toasty. And it's time to plate this up. Yes, I know. Shame on me for making mistakes. You know, if you want next time, let me know. If you want next time, I can just lie and pretend like I didn't and just act like I'm perfect. And then one last thing is you don't have to, but I'm going to add just a little bit of parsley directly to the risotto itself as well. Because this is very creamy and rich, and the parsley will help balance that out just that little bit. It's not something you have to do, but I think it's nice. So then I'm going to grab just a big old bowl. I'm just going to spoon some of the risotto in. Then kind of push it to the edge. And it should, for the most part, it should stay in place if it's thick enough. If it moves in a little bit, that's fine, but it shouldn't be like super loosey-goosey. And then into that hole, we're just going to put down a spoonful of our tomato and whatnot, make sure. And we're just going to kind of build up in the middle of kind of making a bullseye, which is something that in culinary school they teach you not to do. But I think with a dish like this, it looks fine. And then we're just going to put our mussels on top because they are big and beautiful. And I kind of saved one of the shrimps to go on top of the mussels. Yoink. We're just a spoonful of that stuff right on top. And then snacks for the chef, if you're not eating this yourself. And then give the bowl a wipe, if necessary. Small little schmegma. And then look at that. We have a beautiful bowl of risotto with some wicked spicy ass shrimp from the because I added actually a little bit too much chilies, but you know what? It'll be good. It'll balance out. But like you have the risotto that tastes of corn, then you have more corn in there, some shrimp, some tomatoes. That's going to like balance out the richness. And you don't necessarily think of tomatoes as being super acidic, but especially once you especially once you pair them with something creamy, you really do notice that. And so yeah, as you can see, the plating isn't hard. There are some people who can go out there and make these super intricate, ridiculous plates. I'm not one of them. I'm not great at like the super fine motor skills and whatnot. It's an aesthetics thing. It's considered a little bit old school. I think with a dish like this in a bowl, it's pretty hard to avoid. It's more so if you have like a big plate. You want to create contrast. If you have a plate like this, and then you put something down like this, it's unavoidable, right? Because there's not really any other way to plate it. But if I had the risotto on here, what I might do is I might do like a line going across the plate and then have the stuff go within that line. Or I might have like small piles, something like that. It's very much an aesthetics thing. Similar, you're supposed to have, you're not supposed to have even numbers of things on a plate. So if you're like, oh, I have, like shrimp, that like tempura shrimp or something, right? Where you can clearly count each one. You want 3 or 5. You don't want 4 or 6. But again, it's a rule, but kind of, like everything else in life, rules are meant to be broken. So, meh. But yeah, only thing left to do is to dive in. It's really good. Mike, how did yours turn out? Is yours done? Curious. Alright, so Diego, you want to see Peruvian food? I'll try to do that at some point. It'll be fun. Honestly, I'm going to have to do a little bit of research in terms of like trying to find something I can do justice to and truly put my spin. Because I'm not going to sit there and put make traditional causa, or I'm not going to sit there and make lomo saltado straight up. As delicious as a dish as it is, I think there's many people who do it really, really well. I'd want to put something out there where it's like, okay, you have the Peruvian flavors, but like it's Julian's flair. I did the risotto because, yes, risotto's traditional, But I thought I put a nice little spin on it in terms of the using seasonal ingredients, which makes it stand out a little bit from just the norm. But yeah. For those of y'all who watched, thank you so much for tuning in. I truly do appreciate it. You know, hopefully these will grow over time. You know, I'm thoroughly enjoying making the videos and doing all this, but it's like the whole like self-promotion thing is still so weird for me, and I know it's something I have to do and I have to get better at. With any little bit of luck, I'll have a tiny break in the very, very near future. Oh yeah, no, definitely gonna do my style. I put out a video yesterday where I made my spin on, oh screw you and your 648p, where I put my spin on the dish of a YouTuber who has 700,000 followers. The guy's a bodybuilder and he's really, really good. Nothing wrong with taking your time. I tried to go slow, but again, like if I'm not there in person, it can be difficult to monitor. Like, hey, how high is your stove? Are you cooking at the same rate as me? Faster, slower, whatnot. Anyway, so this guy, Greg Doucette, he's a bodybuilder. He's super, super funny, and he has some recipes up on his YouTube channel of some of the stuff that he has for his diet, because he doesn't have the typical bodybuilder's diet. It's way better, and the videos are really good. And like I actually make stuff off of his videos all the time. So I thought I'd put my chefy spin on what is his most famous dish, and then I pushed that out to like. So I released a video yesterday. I pushed that out to a number of the fitness groups I'm in, and so it got, that video in 24 hours got more views than any of my other videos. But also I DM'd Greg. He saw my DM, he liked it, and then he subbed to me on YouTube. And the guy puts out one and very often 2 YouTube videos a day where he just talks about different people, often people who talk about him. And so there's a hope that he's actually going to basically sit there and make fun of what I did. I'll have a good time with it, call me a moron. And then that would hopefully bring eyes to my channel, because in the end, I have a lot to learn, but I'm proud of what I do. I know. Well, yeah, fingers crossed on that, because that'll help me jump up. And then, like, you know, because like the hardest time in YouTube, from what I understand, is when you're very much first starting out and you don't have an audience. And again, just like, I'll happily cook there, but like I'm not great at being like, look at me, look at what I'm doing. Anywho, hope you all enjoyed it. Mike, if you have any, I'm gonna sign off, but if you guys have any questions as you finish this off, don't hesitate to text me. And the next few days or so, I'll probably figure out what my next live cooking live stream is going to be. I'm going to post that online up on my YouTube channel. I'm going to post it very specifically within on the same playlist, which is the live cooking classes. So it'll be up there. It'll have a list of all the ingredients, just like this one did, and also of all the equipment you'll need. So then that way you can cook along. Again, assuming y'all had fun with this, after I put this up, if you could help spread the word, I'd be super grateful for that. And yeah, I'm gonna head out, and again, thank you all so much for tuning in.